I mean, I can.
Okay.
We're live now.
Yeah, we're live now. We're gonna rock paper scissors over who's introducing, maybe. Okay. Okay. We'll both introduce.
Okay.
So this is Tori's channel, and it's called
Tori Talks too.
But I'm taking over for Maximum Chaos because Tori launched a brand new book this week, and we're celebrating. And oh man, I noticed them earlier, and they look so good. They smell good.
They smell like brand new off the press.
Yeah.
And you know what the best part is, Krystle? Are you ready for this?
I am ready. I'm
sure?
so ready. Maybe. Oh, they're floppy.
They're so floppy. They're beautiful. I love it.
That's a sexy book.
Right? Yeah. Hello, everybody. Just welcome to Chaos with Krystle.
Yeah, it's true.
This is what our DMs on Twitter usually sound like, too.
Yeah. It is a really good cover. I remember getting like sneak peeks of it as it was coming together, and I was just like, "Oh my god, they look so good!" And it's really neat. You know, it's been a while since I've been on the back end of somebody else's book, and like getting to know the characters first, and then the slow reveals of the cover and the map, and you had that portrait of Sindri,
yes,
as well.
Probably pull that up actually while we're
show off all the art.
All of Sarah's art.
Yeah,
we're gonna make Sarah take some compliments now.
Yeah, that's sneaky.
Yeah.
I threatened Tori before we started that I was gonna make her take compliments, and I think it was worse than telling her I was gonna be mean.
Oh yes, please be mean. I can handle that. Yeah. Where did I even keep that? Oh, here it is. I found it. This is, you know, I'm actually more organized on my computer than I am on a lot of places in my life, but that doesn't say much.
Same.
Let's see. So we have a window. Here we go.
Oh God.
There she is.
Oh, she looks so good.
She does. She's lovely. I'm trying to remember when Sarah did this, actually. Sarah, do you remember
was it quite a while ago?
It's been a while, yeah.
Oh.
Hey, Andrew.
That must have been hard to sit on it.
Oh, well, you know how that is. It's awful as an author to keep all the secrets.
The secrets is hard. I was going to say, I got all my art like way later because I absolutely did not expect people to read my book. So I was like, nah, I don't need art. I'm never going to get that money back.
Shockingly, you're amazing and people read your book.
No, that's not why we're here. Cut it out. But yeah, that looks really good. So, I mean, that's what we're here to talk about this time. Like I said, you pulled me in, and I was so honored to be asked, but specifically with the focus on character. So we're going to dive into these characters. We're going to do some spoilers, I guess. So I'm going to try to dance around spoilers for the first like half hour or so, and then we'll clearly say to clear the room if you don't want to know exactly what happens to Garen. And then we're going to dive into other characters.
Well, this is
salivate over.
Like I did have a little bit of spoilers with Matt from Matt on Books last week, but this is the first time we've really gone into deep spoilers.
That's bold, doing spoilers before your release date, even.
I mean, I was careful about it, but you know, it's so hard. It's so
just wait till you have to go talk about the second book. That's even harder.
And then I forget, especially like once the third book comes out, because I will forget what happens in which book to some degree. And even like now, where a lot of people are starting to ask, "Oh, well, do you know what happens in book 2?" And I'm like, "Yes, I actually."
Yeah, here it is.
Like,
no, wait.
It's like I know the ending for book 3. Already, and I'm gonna have to sit on that for like 2 years. I hate it.
I'm working on my own 3 right now, and it's like every now and then I want to post like some stuff, and it's like I don't think I can actually mention this in public because it's like I'm so bad at it because I personally don't mind spoilers because either I forget by the time the book comes out and it doesn't matter anyway, or if I remember, I'm just so interested to see how they got to that it's like it's still fun for me. So I don't mind, and then so sometimes I'll be in conversation and I'll say something and people are like, spoilers, dude. I'm like, oh,
sorry.
Oh yeah, other people mind. So yeah, I know the struggle is all I'm saying.
It's so real. Well, yeah, I mean, I knew after reading Legacy of the Brightwash last fall. Oh my gosh, was that last fall?
Was it that? Yeah, I think so, because I was in your last year's wrap up. Ishmael specifically was in your wrap up.
Yes. And I remember getting done with the book and just being like, I feel like, you know, you read books and you recognize things that you can relate to in other authors. And one of the things that I really related to with you was your characterization and the depth to which you go like into your character's psyches and all of this kind of stuff. And I was like, you know what would be awesome is if Krystle would read Bloodstones, like, and let me know specifically what she thinks of the character arcs. And so I did my little like, oh man, I don't know if she's gonna like who are you? You know?
You're awesome. That's good.
Well, it took me about 2 weeks to decide that I had enough courage to ask you. Yeah. But I'm so glad that you read it. I'm so glad.
And you know, I am too. Like, I was just so honored to be asked, and also, what a great job for me. like I was like, absolutely, I will talk characters with anybody who wants to. And so, I mean, it's not a spoiler at all to say you totally captured me with your cast. Their arcs were great. Like, and Connor's in the chat today, and I was yelling at him on a regular basis, like how much I was enjoying it. And the one thing that I found that really stood out to me was that you're really good at kind of dosing out information at an appropriate level, so that I always had enough to know what was going on. I wasn't necessarily confused, but also not so much that I was guessing beats.
Yeah.
And then you were also really good at like drawing attention to things that were going to be important later in a way that it was like, after a reveal or two, I was like, okay, I trust now. She's drawing attention to this person. That's going to be important near the end. And I would try to guess, but then you'd surprise me. So it's like I knew something was coming, but I could never anticipate what it was going to be. And I think that was the most fun of Bloodstones. So I definitely encourage people to pick it up. Go buy it right now and then come back. And so you get to see. Yeah, exactly.
Also, Krystle's website is in the description for anybody who wants to get.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be pitching you though. Cut it out.
That's okay. So Connor, I would love those screenshots someday.
Yeah, no word of a lie. It's all how much you're amazing. I see a lot of.
Krystle's a master of characters. I went and grabbed the Bloodstones after hearing Tori consulted with Kay on that specifically. That's why I asked her.
I mean, I don't feel like I had to do very much though, because seriously, like you had them really solid, and you had a vision for them that I could feel, even if I didn't necessarily know where you were going. Like I could feel very definitively that it was something you paid attention to, and it was really good.
Well, I think even if nothing else, like in the moments where there was just an encouragement note and like the places where you really loved something, I think those are just as valuable as critiques.
They are.
Because especially from somebody who's a fellow like character obsessed writer-reader, it was helpful for me to see your journey through that.
Yeah, and you don't want to accidentally like pull out things that were working while you're trying to change stuff. Yeah, I feel that for sure. Oh, Connor, I think Connor quoted me directly. This is
like a love letter to the Brotherhood of Warriors trope, while somehow also filling the story with so many female characters that display so many kinds of strengths. So the female characters in this trilogy, and they're going to start getting more and more of the stage as we go. I wanted to kind of throw out a smorgasbord, because I think what's fun is like, here's this female character and this type, and here's this female character with this type of, you know, personality and skill set, and then there's just like, it's fun to play with that. And I think I don't really personally really think hard about like, oh, and this person is going to be, you know, a male character, and this person, you know, I don't like as much.
Absolutely, like it was very natural in the balance. Like Sindri and her sister were fantastic, and also like it makes other characters stronger when you do stuff like that, where you're bringing a human dimension, and you're commenting on the genre in a way, like from a loving place, and it elevates everybody. So, you know, very well done.
Thank you.
But since we're talking characters, let's start with the main man.
Taylor. I love multi-dimensional characters, period, in this house.
It was a fantastic cast.
First. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to keep up.
Boggled. So Garen, you've been writing about him for a long time, and
he's the OG.
I found that really relatable. And as much as you'd like to say on a live stream, I'd love for you to talk about it a little bit. Because I feel like your relationship evolving with him is something that speaks to me so directly. So
we've had so many like conversations about this on Twitter, about just our journeys with, and Garen as a specific character has only been around since 2022. But what's kind of interesting about this is the original series that I started 12 years ago. The two kind of protagonists of that series were also young, kind of warrior-esque young boys that were making their way into the world and that sort of thing. And so Garen's kind of a successor, I think, to the original characters from that series. And I knew that he was going to be the backbone of the series pretty much from day one, because I've always loved Band of Brothers, you know, warrior, Motley Crue. Yep. Yeah. And I needed a character that could stand up to themes of the themes that I wanted to explore in the trilogy. His identity is a huge theme, as it is for some of the other characters as well. You know, his childhood trauma shaping who he becomes as an adult, and him struggling to find his own definition of himself. That's a very relatable theme for me as a person. So he kind of carried a lot of, he surprised me a few times while I was writing. And there were certain scenes with him that were really difficult for me to write emotionally, for sure.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that, and kind of like the catharsis of it, but also the weight and the fear of now it's published, which is like, it's such a happy day, but also it's scary. You know, you've been holding this story in your heart, and it's just you and the story for 12 years, and it's safe there. Nobody can judge it when it's there. And then pivoting to it being pivoting to it being for other people, it's a big change in the relationship, and it's cathartic, like I said, and it's scary, like I said, but it's healing, and it's but also a little bit depressing. So anyway, it's a mess.
It's all the things.
Right, which as writers, it's kind of our shtick. So it tracks.
We're here to feel all of the emotions at once.
All of the things, being a hot mess.
Yes. And then making our characters a hot mess so that other people who are also a hot mess can relate.
and then people think that somehow we have stuff together. Like we've snowed them and just thinking we know what we're doing.
I hope people don't read Bloodstones and go, wow, Tori really has it together.
They will though. I'm telling you, you make it look really easy and effortless with the world building and just like I said, the ode to the existing genre while also taking it to new places. And so you're gonna trick people into thinking you've got yourself together.
Well, which author? Isn't there a big name author who said that writers are professional liars?
Oh yeah, I've seen that. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Like, I agree with that to a certain extent. But I do think it's kind of like we're. I don't know, because I feel like
I never said that I had my stuff together. Like, this is just an assumption that people are making about me because I could write a book, which admittedly, that one task is very hard.
Right.
It might be Neil Gaiman. Yeah, he might be right.
Terrifying.
Yeah,
it is very sad. It is. What's cool, and again, this is a generalized for both of us because I know you've had this experience too, but when that terrifying moment when the book is now everyone else's also, and all of a sudden you see other people start kind of just really leaning into the characters that you've created finding relatability in them, and sometimes it resonates with them so much that they step back and think about their own relationships or their life. Like, that's incredible amounts of very scary but rewarding power. I
totally agree. And like, just kind of, seeing other people bring themselves to the cast of characters as well. It's like, that's not what I was thinking of when I wrote it. But man, I am honored that you went there and you told me about it and that I could provide that for you to go there because, it's really moving. We're going to get all emotional. We've only been here for like 15 minutes.
Oh man, I don't know if I'm going to survive the spoiler section.
That'll be the good stuff.
Yeah.
So then, Bloodstones is a multiple POV.
Yes.
4, I think, right? Am I? Yeah. Yes, the pop quiz I passed.
It was originally not.
that was my segue to. Yeah. It wasn't always that way. And I'm curious if you have like a definitive reason why, or if it was just like I felt it was right, so I did it.
A little bit of both. So I got to the end of chapter 3, and bless his heart, 11-year-old Garen could not shoulder this entire world by himself. And I realized that, while originally I wanted this to be very close and intimate view of one character who was telling the full story of all of this, I realized that was, it wasn't enough. And it needed, this is a story that is, while it is very much, Garen is a big piece of it, it doesn't revolve around just him.
Right. There's some socio-political issues going on.
Sindri. Sindri is her own socio-political issue by herself, to be honest.
That's why we stand her in this house.
Right. I loved writing her. But yeah, I got to the end of chapter 3 and I hit a roadblock and I was like, this is not working. And I tried to write the next chapter for Garen and it was just like running into a brick wall over and over and over again. And I was like, we need somebody else. And I'm frustrated that I'm so limited in this POV right now because I want to explore more of the world. And so then we got Master Lily. Master Lowy was the second one that came in because it was like, here's an 11-year-old boy who knows nothing about the world.
Yeah.
Very small world sphere.
Yeah.
And then you have this older scholar who is very entrenched in all of the socio-political things that are going on. So it allowed me an avenue to write from a complete contrast.
Yeah. That switch was really good. Because I'm not sure if I knew, like, going into the book, if it was exclusive to Garen or not. And then so when you drop Lowy, it's like, oh, I see. We're gonna play with some stuff in this one.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a delicate balance between not telling the reader things and also letting the reader see what's going on, and then having a character that doesn't know, and the reader's just like, oh my gosh,
oh no,
he doesn't know that.
Exactly.
And that's fun.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the things that added to the that feeling of trust, where it's like, you know what's going on, and I always know enough about what's going on that when new things come up, I trusted your narrative voice to carry me through with enough information that I wouldn't be lost. Jumped into like a different culture completely with Sindri. Although her like the horse tribes is such I don't know, it's just like one of my favorite tropes in fantasy, like just
same.
But you wrote it really respectfully too. Like, you didn't play them as brainless barbarians, which is like my pet peeve of my favorite trope. So how did she become necessary? Like, was she?
I think just like Lowy was, I as an author, I'm an author that is constantly trying to break out of the box. Always.
Yeah.
That's why I don't outline, because I hate it.
Such an interesting. Sorry, I just totally segue. But like, you say that, but it's funny because it's like you kind of set yourself up for what would have been a really claustrophobic narrative with Garen, given what happens in that third chapter. I don't. But like it's. Yeah, well, but it would have been really isolating and constraining, and he's like, his life becomes constrained by a box of this thing that happens to him. So it's interesting that you went for it, and you only lasted 3 chapters, and then as soon as he hits that box, you're like, nah, I'm out.
No, I'm out.
Yeah, you couldn't. No.
Does this surprise anyone? I don't know.
It's just funny that you say that after doing it to yourself, and then just like, no, it's like, no.
Well, and that's why I think having a mixture of intuitive and flexibility is so important for me as a writer, and why I'd never be able to stick to a strict outline is because I need to get to those moments and be like, nope. Swerve.
I think that's part of how like the twists come so naturally, because it's like you get to those moments and you need an escape, and so we're escaping with you, and you're taking us on that journey of, this is going to be claustrophobic. Not. Just
kidding. And Sindri was another one of those moments where, the Kateshi culture, which is Garen's culture, is very. There's a lot of constraints. There's a lot of rules. It's honor in a very different way than Sindri's culture perceives it, and it's very controlled. And so I think, once I'd gotten through some of the early chapters of the book, and I realized 2 things. One, I wanted, as an author, I think I needed a bit of a just explosive out of the box. Like, I needed to get out of the box and be a little less controlled, because I'm not that type of person. And so also, I think I'm really interested by the ripple effect of decisions that are made, and both individually and on a national level. And I thought it was like, all right, what is going on here in Katesh look like from a country completely outside of it, and that doesn't have direct ties to anyone in Garen's circle. And I just started. I was up on top of a grassy plain hill, and there was a woman on a horse, and she was ready to knock some heads, and that's just she just kind of showed up.
And she ripped open all the boxes.
Yes, she is the box slayer, Sindri the box slayer. That's her Magic the Gathering card.
And then so her relationship with her own culture and her sister and her parents was just so interesting, and it was again that same feeling of the familiar, but then also you brought it to new places with the politics and just like the cultural dynamics of the clans. So that was really fun. Like, how long did it take you to flesh all that out, if it was kind of like on the fly?
I think it was a little bit on the fly, but I mean, I can definitely point to I had just read a few months prior Con Eagleden's his Conqueror series, and just I mean, I've written, hot-headed warriors prior to this. That's an archetype that I gravitate towards all the time, and so I was just intrigued by this. Right? I really gravitated towards that idea of there's kind of this juxtaposition between honor and just complete brutality, which I feel like you see that still in the Kateshi culture. It's just very different. And that combined with a lot of interest in Norse history, which is my own heritage, and like kind of took those two things and sort of stuck them in a blender, and out came the Maleki tribes. So Sindri's kind of like half
definitely the child of a blender,
half Viking something or other. I don't know.
Horse Vikings.
And one of the things that I do appreciate though is to me, every culture is incredibly rich and interesting, and deserves to have, it be shown. You can see it from other outside perspectives, and it's going to look different. But I like showing both sides of that. So Sindri looks at Katesh, and she's like, here's all the things that they're doing wrong. And then somebody from Katesh would look at Sindri and be like, here's all the things they're doing wrong. And it's just kind of this.
What I like specifically about your world building is then within their own cultures, they're not monoliths either. Like there's conflict between Sindri and her own tribe. They're not one body and one voice. They are they've got some messes to deal with. Spoiler-free section. And so she's, she looks to the distant borders and has all that judgment. But there's a lot of turmoil within her storyline, within her family, within her, and I just that's my catnip, like as a fantasy reader, like when each culture, like it has its own identity, but they're not all the same. They're not a horde. They're a complex culture. It was really well done.
Thank you.
And then, so speaking of family, we also have the last point of view, which is Garen's brother. He gets a little bit harder to talk about without spoilers.
Yes.
Because his arc is kind of defined by the thing.
Yeah. Yep.
So what can you say without spoiling his arc? And then maybe we'll jump through him into spoiler section.
So Zario was, I call him the lucky accident character because he wasn't originally a POV either. I put him and oh my goodness, Garen. I can't say anything anymore. Garis, Zario, Garen.
In your defense, this is like your third live stream in a row. Like,
doing great.
There's the point where words kind of cease to exist.
I put all of my eloquent words in the book. I'm out.
Sorry. I don't know what happened. Hopefully you guys didn't hear that. Okay, I got an ad because I was trying to sign into the chat on YouTube to say thank you for Taylor for coming. But okay, thanks for coming, Taylor. It sounds like she's on her way out. But okay, so back to you after my chaos.
Zario was a kind of a nod to my then critique partner who was like, oh man, I just loved Zario in the first couple chapters. I'd love to see a POV from him. And I was like, oh, well, I'll write a chapter from him.
That person is a hero.
She's in the acknowledgements and she is responsible for Zario being because
hero behavior.
I got like halfway through the chapter and all of a sudden I realized I freaking love writing this character. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like and he just came off the page immediately. And it was like all of these pieces that I hadn't seen within the structure of the rest of the events of the story just fell into place with him so perfectly. And there, he's kind of a parallel to Garen in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And again, sibling bonds are something that I'm minorly obsessed with. You won't find any of them in any of my books.
She lies.
But he was, and it's so funny because now the number of people who love Zario just makes me so happy because he, dang it, he deserves it.
Yeah.
He worked hard for that.
He does, and it's that same thing where he's a salute to the warrior archetype, but the decisions that he makes and the person that he wants to be is unique to Tori Tekken because it's just like. Man, like we love a stoic, chaotic,
absolutely
warrior, but then also like he's not a jerk about it. Like he's so raw and vulnerable, and I don't know. It could be partially because we see them growing up, like they're so young. That family is so young at the beginning of the book, and then so his relationship to Garen and what it does to him through the arc, but also his relationship with the middle brother. Is it the middle brother?
Karen,
yeah. And it's just like, oh, baby, you're breaking my heart. And it's so good. So yeah, like that whole family, and then all of their relationship to their father, and their father's relationship to them. It's just heartbreaking, but like deliciously so.
Yeah, complicated family dynamics is something that I think am a little too morbidly fascinated by.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the catharsis, right? And it's part of why we come to fantasy. Those people outside the genre think we're here for the magic and the dragons and stuff, and we are, but it's like it's the set dressing, so to these human stories that we can tell from like a safe distance. Like it's like we're holding it apart from us, and it's like if it's not in this world, then it's a little bit easier to engage with it. Yeah, absolutely. And then, but like. The themes are still superhuman and super accessible and relatable, and you nailed it with this book. So I think to say anything more about Zario, it's time to jump into the spoilers. Yeah.
That's the goal, Jessica, always.
Delicious emotional destruction. Like, I suspect she would like this book a lot. Just she's just with the characters specifically that she likes. I think there's going to be a lot for her to like. We
readers do have our types, you know.
Yeah, it's true, and it's funny. Like when you were describing Zario, like it felt like that with Ishmael too, and it's the same thing where it's like he was such an afterthought in. I guess it would have been the original draft. Like with the way I drafted it way back, he wouldn't have come in until the second book at all.
Okay.
But then, you know, I moved some stuff around and put him in one scene. In the banquet scene, and then he just took over from there.
He just was like, "Excuse me, everyone.
I've arrived. The main character is here." So yeah, it's super relatable, and then he gets a point of view in the second one, and so yeah, like it's funny, like the parallels of these characters that kind of know what they're up to, even if we don't until we trust them. So then I guess we're gonna drop the spoiler-free section.
This is your warning, everyone.
Banner. Yeah, if you don't like spoilers, it's time to bounce.
So
and then we'll give it a second, maybe.
Yeah. So again, everyone, look at the change in the
we're
ticker going across.
we're headed into some light spoilers at first, but then we'll probably, as soon as I mention any of Garen's.
Yes. So anybody who doesn't want to be spoiled for the entire ending of the book,
or like even like the first third, yes. So then. For Zario, I felt like Garen disappears in that mysterious third chapter for plot reasons, and you pick up Zario after. After we see Loie, I'm trying to remember if it's after we see Sindri, but I don't think so. Yeah, and it's like watching him bear that loss was just like so powerful, and he doesn't have very many chapters in the first 2/3, does he? But he's so memorable because so Garen is the baby brother of the three boys, and watching this older brother who's trying to be a good big brother kind of shift completely with that grief was really powerful. And I'm wondering, like, was it easy to go there for you? Like, or were his chapters hard? Because his chapters are really heartbreaking, but well done. Yeah. Obviously, like, he's such a favorite.
He is. It cracks me up. He's kind of become the heartthrob of the book so far.
There's lots to choose from. There's a veritable buffet.
There is. Pick your poison, everybody. Yeah. I think for me, whenever I get stuck, one of the things I ask myself is what don't I know about this character? I don't know them well enough, because if I did, I would know how they would react here. And with Zario, he takes on a lot because of his personality type. He is a firstborn.
Yep.
So he has a lot of the responsibility syndrome. And especially where
taking things too seriously syndrome.
Exactly. Yes. And he lost his mother at a young age. And, you know, Theory, his stepmother, his father's second wife, has a good relationship with all of the boys. And that was really important to me, because I did not want the evil stepmother trope.
I really like that. And then how they doted on the baby sister.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, it just melted into a little pile of butter every time she was on the page. Well,
and that's like, who doesn't love? And I always had this image in my head of what does Zario look like as an adult, and how do I walk that backwards? And Zario becoming this fierce, stoic, responsible warrior who turns into a giant teddy bear around his 4-year-old or 5-year-old sister, you know. And just, I love that juxtaposition of the man in armor with his spear and then this tiny little girl with her dolls.
We need, you know, more men who love babies in this genre. Like that's one thing that I feel like we need to get on it, because it's like it's true to life, you know, believe it or not. Like men also go stupid over babies in the best way. Not all of them, obviously, and not all women do either, but I feel like we need more men who melt over babies.
Well, and it's like, my dad, you can hand the most fussy child to my father, and he will have them smiling and asleep in like 5 minutes. He is a baby whisperer, and he's 6'1", big farm guy hands. Like and I grew up.
It's those big hands that make him so good.
Tiny little babies. And I love. I love contrast in so many different forms in my books, and the contrast of that really hard brutality that we find so often everywhere in this world, and then having these little moments where you remind yourself that these characters are still human and still love people in their lives. And that was really important. And Zario has this infuriating goodness to him that sometimes he's honestly there's moments where I'm like, I wish I was this person. You know, there's a little bit of that in there for me, I think. That I'd say he's definitely the closest thing to a traditional hero character that I have in this book, for sure. But I totally tangented there away from your original question.
No, it's all part of it, because, you know, I'm sure that made it a little bit easier.
When you have a father like Counselor Hallex, who is emotionally detached and abrasive, and very high expectations, high level of control, Zario kind of becomes in some ways responsible for that older male emotional figure to his younger brothers, and certainly to Irie. And so I wanted to show him taking the grief, because he's the one who's emotionally connected. Counselor Hallex isn't going to show his grief. Zario is. Yeah, that was really good. I'm just like reliving it all. I'm stuck back in your pages, but that's a good. As you're saying that, talking about the difference between them, it reminds me of that awful sociology experiment where they have like the little baby monkeys, and one baby monkey has like a fluffy surrogate mother, and the other baby monkey has like the barbed wire cage surrogate mother. I don't know if you ever saw those awful pictures in high school. Like it was in, I don't know, anthropology, psychology, and sociology in like grade 11, and it just like that image lives in my head rent free still. And as you're saying that's what I think of Counselor Hallex, where it's just like there's no sense of nurturing in that man at all. And I don't think he's trying to be cruel. I think it's just beyond his capability to be soft in a way that would be helpful to his children. And I think Counselor Hallex in a lot of ways is a nod to when men close off their emotions.
Yeah, it's like a warning a little bit. It's like, this is, you know, you think you're really tough and stoic and cool, but it's like, this is what it does to everybody around you. Although like we see the a little bit of that dissolving in him through the arc of the book, which was so satisfying. It's like, yes. and watching
the cracks
him, like,
in the facade.
Yeah, and and like it was really interesting to kind of see, like, does he know what happened to his son or not? And like he's playing head games with the people around him because he's a politician, basically.
Right.
And you know, does he know or not? Like I couldn't tell. I think there's a reveal at the end that he knows, and it'll be really interesting to see if and when he ever sees Garen again, and kind of the fallout of his own inability to grapple with his own emotions, because it's like, you know, this stoic act is not healthy. Mm-mm. And so anyway, that's something that I'm looking forward to as the series progresses, if ever he sees Garen again.
Yeah.
So then that pivots really nicely into
it's true, Sarah.
Yeah.
That's really cool, Bex.
Yeah. I think
like, there's
community that closes around children is not something that we see often enough in the genre, which is a shame, because it's such a human experience to love children, even if they aren't yours. And that's not to say that people who don't love children aren't human, obviously, but I feel like you know, this argument comes up on Twitter semi regularly, where it's like, other people's kids aren't my problem, but it's like, we're all kind of trying to be human here, so you know.
Well, if you look back at least for me, if I look back at my life and all of the people who were not related to me in any way, who took a moment, like, you know, I used to sit by an older lady every Sunday at church. I would run into the sanctuary and I would go sit by Grandma Lois. I called her Grandma Lois. She was not related to me in any way. She adored me. And it was so fun. And I was tiny, you know, I was like 6 or 7. And we visited her all the way up till she was in the nursing home and after she passed away. And we just, I look back at her as fondly as I do many of my biological relatives, because it was just and she just welcomed me right in, and there was no hesitation there.
Yeah. That's really relatable, because for me personally, like, my best male role models were no one related to me. They were my mom's friends. Like, she had a lot of friends who were gay men, and they were kind of the only men in my life that treated me as a human being. And so it's hard to imagine who I would have been if it wasn't for them and their, you know, compassion and joy and teaching me how to express and experience all of these things. You know, so justice for non-biological parental figures.
Family.
Yeah, that's a way easier way of saying it than what I was trying to do. But then, so speaking of found family,
I just wanted to really quickly respond to this. Kirta is not Jai's mother. She has raised him, but she is not his mother. She was the midwife that delivered him. So, side note.
Yeah. Just, so speaking of Jai and everybody else, you know, so Garen is kidnapped. How much do you want to say about his arc after the kidnapping?
I mean, we warned everybody.
Okay, so he's being trained to be somewhat of an elite warrior, which includes a whole smackload of other children also being children being trained. They're all like 11, 12-year-olds when they're kidnapped from their families around the country. Speaking of trauma. And
yeah.
How soon did you know how many notable characters there was going to be at the end of it, or was it one of those things that it's like some of these boys dropped and some of these boys survived and you had no control?
I mean, I knew the main motley crew of Brew High Boys pretty early on, and I actually worked really hard to give some weight to the characters that I knew weren't going to end up in that circle.
That's why I was wondering, because like it wasn't obvious from the beginning, like how many were going to survive, and it's like you put your bets on some, and then oops, he's dead. Okay, all right.
Well, and I think part of that was I had an honest chat with myself as a writer, and I said, okay, in reality, there's kind of a comfortable spot where you have a motley crew that's big enough, and then a motley crew that is too big.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, how many characters do I want to have at the end of this to take forward into the rest of the trilogy? Realistically, like, what does that look like? And then accounting for a couple of things that happened. And a number of that because of the scene at the end of part 2 where we cut our numbers really quickly.
Pretty drastically.
So I knew I wanted to have 7 or 8 at the end. As kind of, that was like the threshold of any more than that would have been a nightmare to try to wrangle them all. They're enough to wrangle as it is.
I think if they were, if you went with the original plan of Garen being the only point of view character, you might have gotten away with a larger cast in his arc. But considering there's Sindri's arc, and Zarya too starts to bring new people, and I'm sure later in his arc there's going to be a lot of people around him, because
you got to meet
he's
some
a pretty
of
important
his
soldier now.
and you got
we just start
military chums. And they'll come back in more in book 2. So
but and then what I liked with all those boys where it's like you let us get to know some of them before you killed them, and so it's like
sorry.
I mean, I liked it. I liked it when you hurt me. But I think it's respectful, like you're juggling, it's fiction, but you're juggling lives, and so giving them a little bit of space to be boys.
They needed to matter.
And then so when they start dropping, it felt like a real tragedy, which was really well done. Especially, I don't know if that's too much of a spoiler, but the boy close to the end who tries to finally leave, like that one really hurt me. I was rooting for him, but then what happens is such a big character moment for Garen.
And I always knew I had to get there in this book.
I think you had to complete that arc of becoming. And there were so many notes from me, like, should he be accepting the new name now? What about now? Could he accept it now? That's what you get.
And then finally I was waiting, and then I get to the
please disregard every time I question your instincts. This reveal is perfect. So that's what you get from me as a alpha reader or beta reader. I talk a lot.
It was such a joy, Krystle. It really was. I laughed aloud so many times reading through your notes.
It was a lot of fun. Like, you juggle those reveals really well. And then also, like, you want the audience to be questioning those things too. Like, that's not just my job as a beta reader, but also my job as a reader, where it's like, you get to see what people are thinking as they go, and you can decide, it's like, yes, I want you to go through this pain. Suck it up. Keep reading. So then we have some boys that you can name. Like, you have.
Yes, I can finally talk. I know you have some.
Yeah, it must have been so hard not to, because just their existence is a spoiler.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
Daniel, I did know that. I knew that.
Yeah, that was the one.
Tyrim was a character who, again, contrasts Garen because Garen.
He refuses the journey. He's like, nope, I'm out of here. And he holds on to that through his whole arc.
Yes.
And so it was really interesting to watch it happen and go like, what's he gonna do? Like, is he just gonna fall in and decide against this and save himself? But is it saving himself? Like, the boys by the end aren't they're a new version with new names. Like, so that was really powerful.
Yeah, I think Tyrim represents the determination to reject a dissociation from self.
Yeah.
That is something that Garen was the opposite
grapples
to.
With.
That in order to survive it, he has to become something else.
He does, but he resisted it for a really long time, which is why I was talking about, is it time for him to accept his new name? Because it's like he was not having it for a long time, and because he knew Tyrim's real name, he hung on to Tyrim's real name, and that was just such an interesting choice.
Well, I think it
thematically, where it's like, I know who you are, and if I know who you are, I know who I am. And,
right. Yep.
And then
Garen, I needed to set him up. He's not a weak character. He's a young boy who survived the death of his mother. He has survived all of these horrific changes in his life at a very young age. And it kind of goes back to that idea that the mind is the last plane of freedom, like that somebody can take everything from you. But Garen held on to his name in his mind as his last way of resistance.
But then even that,
And so what does that look like in the rest of the trilogy? I don't know.
Yes, you do. But then there are other people around him that go through the same journey. Who do you want to talk about first?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Pick your poison.
I loved them so much. Like, I don't even know that I could pick a favorite. Like, obviously I love Kajin because. But the softer boy, Jai, and the boy with the mask. He really had me. And I was scared you were gonna kill him. Like, I was not ready. I was like, you can have them all, but leave him alone. And you handled it so well, where he has the scars and the mask to cover them, but it never feels like you're trying to say that he's in any way monstrous. In fact, his scars are not his fault, and if anything, his scars are proof of the monstrosity of the culture that he lives in. And he's such a good character.
I love him so much. Well, and that's where, like, again, kind of going back to the writing process a little bit, when I was designing each of the boys in the Motley Crew, once I knew roughly how many I wanted to have, I started making contrasting characters, and I started thinking, okay, we have Garen, who's this noble-born boy. So let's go to the opposite side, and there goes Kajin, and we have this street urchin with like zero filter.
Hot mess embodied.
He's delightful to write. He's absolutely delightful to write. And he just is like every man for themselves. He's grown up on the street. He doesn't know if he's going to get a meal or survive to the next day. And so him accepting the role of Bruhai was so much easier because he's
it's like, these people feed me. I'm done.
Exactly.
Easy choice.
But on the opposite side, Garen has an easier time kind of instantly forming a loyalty with this newfound family, whereas Kajin, that is something that he really struggles with.
He tried to keep them at arm's length, but they're together for, is it like 6 years? Because there's 2 in the first book alone. So and then, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the names, but there's a
lot of them.
It's been a while. It's been like a couple of months now. Jeez. But the blonde boy, Rue, he was good.
So I had somebody just finish the book this last week who Rue was their favorite character in the book, and that made me so incredibly happy, because you're gonna have, like,
if you give that book to 7 different people, they're gonna have each a different favorite, because it's like they're all so vibrant. Like some of them have very little page time, but just because you didn't write 300,000 words like some people do. Weirdos exclusively. But what you do with them in that limited time is really a skill. Like, just how vibrant and fully fleshed they are in that short period of time. So it's going to be like everybody's going to have different favorites for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And he was good. I love. Like they're all so good. Like,
well, and Rue was one of the ones that came in after Kajin, and I wanted another, because Rue also comes from a very tragic level background, and he does not come from nobility either. But he doesn't have this. He has a wildness to him, but it's different than Kajin. It's more
it would be like the difference between like a hunting dog and a feral dog. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're both slightly unhinged.
Exactly. But one of them is house trained, and it's not Kajin.
No. Rue is actually, if there's any like super nerds in the chat, so Rue is actually, I took a note from one of my favorite characters in the Rurouni Kenshin storyline, is a character named Sojiro, who is this incredibly lethal samurai fighter. And he's very young, and he looks very baby-faced, and he always smiles. Always.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
and I loved that. Boy. I love Sojiro so much. And so Rue was kind of, and then I wanted him to have a reason. He's not just going to smile all the time before he kills you. There's a reason why it's he's his mask.
That as
and then I also needed a contrast.
The brutality. Yeah.
And then we get Saba. Yep.
We stand a himbo in this house.
Yep. You loved Saba. There were a lot of Saba comments.
Yeah, he's quiet. He's a really quiet character, but he steals the show a little bit whenever he's in a scene, which is what I'm talking about with like limited page time, but so much work is done. He is a good one.
I didn't want to waste. I wanted each of my characters to have the depth that they would if they were protagonists, and it's just they don't have as much screen time, but they're still
but if you know them that well from the background as the writer, it shows through as it did for you the situation where it's like you had an intimate familiarity with them, and it bled into every little word they got on the page. And so then
a big part of that was literally, I could have, if I wanted to, I could put this book down and I could go back to the beginning and I could tell the story from any one of their points of view and get us to the same point. And I think that was important, because while Garen is definitely our protagonist, all of the other boys, I may do some origin novellas at some point for some of the other boys.
Yeah, I think that would be just on a marketing level. I think that would be a fantastic idea because people will eat them up because it's like everyone will have their favorites. But then also it's like as I'm gonna bet as the trilogy progresses and they get more time, it's gonna be like a shifting favorites. Like Lord knows, every time I turned the page, I had a new favorite. Like just they were so well done.
There's a Sojiro fan in the comments that makes me so happy. Sojiro's amazing.
Jam is awesome. So absolutely, you guys need to connect.
Daniel had asked, where did you get the numbers from? Saba is a number 3 in Manding. Like, I did not know that. That's really cool. I throw a bunch of letters together until I like something, basically. So, and Saba actually, so is the number 7 in Kateshi, and it's actually also the name of a tree in Katesh that has 7 branches. And cool. So there's a Saba tree actually in the middle of the courtyard at Garen's father's house. Okay. And we see that in the very beginning, and then then we have Saba the himbo later.
Glorious himbo. That's such a neat thing because it's like I totally missed it the first time through, but for sure when I reread it, it's gonna be like which is like part of why I don't mind the spoilers at all, because it's like once you know, then you can go back. Maybe this is just only some people reread. Way. Yeah, like once you know, you can go back and be like, oh, there it is. Oh, that was my first clue. It's like, yeah, I love that feeling. Yep. I'm a chronic rereader.
Based on the last part of the book, I think it's going to be fun to see people go back and, knowing the reveal at the end, see all of the bits in there. Yeah. Hey, Todd, thank you for the comment on the cover art. There are going to be 3 in this trilogy, and that will be a closed story. And then there will be a novella that will go back about 3,000 years and explain more of where the magic system went. And then there's another series after that 3 to 5 books probably.
Awesome.
So,
and where's our book about what's his name, with Sindri? Yes.
You know, it was funny because the Grimdark magazine just opened their short story submissions again today. Yeah. And the first thought I had was, I could write Hashir for that, and it would be really cool. Because I've been talking. I almost did a little bit of Hashir's backstory for the Advent of Winter, and then decided I needed a break from Drillar completely and something else. But I had an idea that ties in some of the other characters that we've met, like not Counselor Hallex. Like Third Hand Jakar, who is oh my word, my brain's not working. Zario's commander, and like Hasuya John, who you meet in the very, very beginning of book 1, and he leaves the scene very quickly.
It's shady.
You're right. So like pulling in some of the characters that would have been a bit younger at that point.
That's cool.
So yeah, I have some ideas. But Hashir was a character that I definitely needed to pull in this book because his race is so central in the second series.
Okay.
That it needed a presence here. And he's an exile, so he's not like in his culture at the moment.
But he's just a thread that you can tug on later and people will know where you've gone. Yeah, that makes sense.
The Corral aren't going to be this brand new concept. Yeah. And he's also
really good too.
He's a fun character. So I don't know. Let's see the other Bruhai boys. Nin. We needed a contrast of a boy that every time you get to him, you're like, can someone this boy should not be here. Like, none of them should be, but Nin is like, he's so gentle-hearted, and he's a healer at heart. If he had been left alone, he probably would have grown up as a healer. And he's going to utilize that skill, obviously, because when you fight a lot, that's necessary.
Yeah, they're gonna need it. Yeah.
But he's also now been forced to learn poisoncraft and a lot of these other things that, you know, are
so contrary to his character. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's got too much of a conscience for his own good, and it's really heartbreaking.
Yeah. I love that you went there, because it's like the story is, like I said, about, you know, contrasting characters. It's enriched by the presence of these characters who are soft and gentle, and compassionate, because in that way we can see how hard this is for them and how heavy this is going to be for them. And like, if they were all kind of stoic and prickly, it would be certainly it would still be good, but having the softness gives that horror of what they're being told they must endure. There was no selection process where they could volunteer. You know, they must endure this or die. And so I love that you went there with these children, who would have been very nurturing if left to their own devices. Even Garen, like, you know, he's a sweet kid, and
probably would have been a scholar.
Yeah.
Maybe a counselor someday, you know?
Yeah. But
but who knows where? I don't want to know where Kajin would be.
Yeah, and he's the one character
probably running a street gang somewhere.
Saved him. I would read that book though.
Right?
After he escapes the Bruhai and he goes and takes care of all the street children, but he's Kajin, so he's Kajin, so it's still unhinged, and he's making the street children do crimes.
He'd turn into Fagin, and it becomes Oliver Twist.
Exactly. Yeah. Except he's the hero.
Right. Yeah.
The anti-hero, I guess.
It's, you know what though, it's funny because each one of these boys I kind of sat down and looked at, okay, what is their arc in this trilogy? What do they need to learn, grow into? What does their arc look like? What is, you know, for Kajin, how does he learn to put himself after the good of other people? How do we get to a point like that? Which I don't feel like is a spoiler, even though it's, you know.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's a band of brothers, like that's
right. And right now, Kajin is still, to some degree, very much out for himself, and he's going to put his own best interests first because he's learned to do that. And he's, you know, I'm really excited to give some tired dad vibes with Garen in book 2. Because he's the leader of this group, and he just, the poor dude.
Mr. Wrangle. Oh my God, this poor guy. So ready.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Like, I can't wait for the, like, you know, because Kajin is doing what he's told, but he's given enough freedom that he, you know, gets into some things.
The spirit and not the letter of the law, I'm sure.
Yes, and Kajin is enjoying the lavishness that he has been gifted. Where Garen is like, well, so like I grew up in that, so it's not as much of a like, wow, I can have wine and, you know, parties whenever I want kind of thing, which the Bruhai really can't, but Kajin doesn't like.
There's a shock.
Yeah, so Kajin is very much the eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die character. Absolutely. Yes. Sort of. It's not. So
they're I would say more they're like elite bodyguards for the new king. So, you know, the book starts with kind of a crisis, a political crisis, where the king's son is dead, and there's lack of surety as to where the country's going to go. And so the boys, the Bruhai, are an experimental project where they're elite warriors to protect the king, so that, you know, we don't have any more dead kings. So yeah. So kind of neither, but they're kind of, I'm sure they're going to break a lot of theoretical laws in order to do what they're told. The
Bruhai are above the law.
Yeah.
They're only under the king. And
right.
So, you know, if he walks out in the street with a Bruhai mask, he can literally order anyone to do anything and they have to obey him. So yeah, I agree, Daniel. There's some if you like that trope, I'm sure there's
it's the same vibe of like a group of kids being trained to be external to the law. They're being trained by their own government to be external to the law would be the only difference.
Yes, it's sanctioned.
Yeah.
Sort
of. But also secret,
by part of the government, it is sanctioned.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
It is.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you, John. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're enjoying it so far. And then he also asked if I wouldn't say negative.
It's too short.
That's my Krystle gives me 1 star. It's too short.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say like, you know, everybody's been super supportive. There are definitely people who would like more of certain things or, you know, thought that certain characters should do more or less at certain points in the book. And you're always going to have some of that.
I mean, it's inevitable. Yeah, it's inevitable. And it's, you know, it's something that we all get as soon as we go beyond our initial circle of audience, because like the first people that read our books are the most likely to enjoy it because it's like they hear what we're having to say about it. They like us, they like our style, they like what we've talked about as we were reading the book. So that first circle is like the people who are most excited and most likely to enjoy it and only have minor, you know, word count problems. Not enough boys. But then, you know, as you leave that circle through word of mouth, which is a good thing, you get more people who maybe don't. And it's just part of the
I mean, one of the things that a couple of people have brought up that I can completely understand is when you have a motley crew of a bunch of boys who are all getting new names and there's a lot of them, it can be a little difficult to follow at the beginning, which I can completely understand.
Cast, yeah.
It is. And I did my absolute best to make that as like as little of a jarring experience as possible.
Some of the boys most of the boys we never knew their original names. Nope. So yeah, and I think that was a good choice.
Yeah. That was part of trying to keep it cleaner because I was like, there's no way I can introduce people them all and then change all of their names.
Yeah.
People would riot. So really the only two that you know now what their original names were Tira and
Tiram, yeah.
Kajin, I don't think is ever going to reveal his original name. I just don't see him doing that.
I don't think he would. Yeah, like he's got no connection to that version of himself. It's like this is an upgrade for him. Like, which is almost as depressing as like the other boys have been stolen from reasonably good lives and reasonably good families. And that's very sad. But also the fact that this is his upshot.
Yeah, I know.
Also like, oh, babe.
I know. Like but there's what I loved about writing Kajin in those moments, because everything is so bleak and so hard for these boys. And what I loved about Kajin is he brought this kind of lightness
tonight.
Yeah, and just this like, what's the matter with you kind of vibe about it, where he's like almost turning it into like a competition of sorts in some places, where it's how that's how he's coping with you know, facing death on a daily basis still.
Yeah. But at least they're feeding him. There's, you know, 2 or 3 square meals.
Kirta's a good cook.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jai was I'm trying really hard to set up all of these characters for the rest of the story. And that's, you know, trying to look ahead to everything that happens to them in book 2 and book 3 and pulling myself back to, okay, what do I put in now that is going to set us up for all of these things?
I think that you did accomplish that very well. Where I think it's part of the trust that I felt, where it's like, you know, I could see that you were being intentional about the things that you were building. But you did the hard part, which is not only looking forward to the whole arc, but giving an arc in this one book. Like this one book is a complete arc by itself, which is hard to manage in a trilogy, because it's like sometimes trilogy or the first book is the setup book and it doesn't feel like it stands alone. Or there are some times where the first book and then the second book is like, oh, now what? It's really hard to balance. Like, I'm not saying any particular way is right or wrong. But I found that what you did was really good, where you were able to keep an arc in this one book, but also you can definitely feel that you have a plan. And the seeds are there for that new growth.
Out of curiosity, since you're such a big super fan of this group of boys now, what are some of the things that you are looking forward to more of in book 2?
I think it's going to be really interesting to see the boys adjust to now what. Because they spent it's 6 years. I know I've already asked you this and I already got the answer, but it's 6 years, right? That they're so, and that was in, you know, in a fortress. That was the box that I was alluding to in the non-spoiler section, where they've been taken away from their lives, some of them very vibrant lives, and they're kept in a fortress where they're forced to train every day, and some nights, and they're forced to kill. They're on like a sustenance diet. They're not at all thriving. And then at the end of the book, the light switched on and they go back to the world. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they cope and how they don't cope, with that very sudden switch. And it's like they knew the switch was coming for sure, but there's no like petering in for them. It's now you're here and now you're not. Now you're in the real world. Don't fuck it up. Oh, sorry. I've been so good. But that switch is going to be really interesting from a character perspective, but also like from a political perspective, because it's like you said that thing about how it's like if Garen goes out into the street as a Bruhai and orders people to like whatever kill each other, legally they have to. How are these people going to feel about this sudden new law where there's these 7 teenagers going around with the authority of the king? They're speaking for the king. I don't see that going over very smoothly.
I mean, if they take advantage of it, certainly not.
That's true.
And that's where it's gonna be that's, you know, spoiler, I guess, for the beginning of the book. That's not how they approached it necessarily. But I I think that's where one of the things that binds all of the Bruhai boys together is all 7 of them have this underlying nobility of character, whether they like it or not. Not naming any names, but, and I think at heart, they've all been raised in a culture where honor is a big deal. Even
though they've been stripped of like all the bonds of who they used to be. That's interesting. It'll be, it would be interesting to see if any of them push that a little bit.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, you know, because Garen is also now up against a big test, because not only are all of these boys out back in the real world, and, you know, you can't avoid
in charge of them.
He's the leader. And so when somebody steps a foot out of line, what is he going to do about it?
At the ripe old age of 17?
17, 18. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. He's a very old man in an 18-year-old body.
Yeah, but also like he's still a boy carrying all of that trauma, all like he, just because of the fraught relationship with his father, like he started out physically comfortable for sure. Mm-hmm. And he had his brother to lean on, and his stepmother, but he wasn't guaranteed necessarily a good, healthy path before all of this, because he was carrying a bit of trauma just because his father is
something else,
a wire cage. Yep. And then even that was enough to kind of give him a shaky, and then the switch to, and now you're this other person, like he's carrying a lot. So he's going to be an old soul, but cracked around the edges a little bit.
I think this is a good point, Danielle, and I think this comes down to not only have they been trained to be lethal and protect, but they've been under control for so long that, you know, Master Lowy and the king and now the crown prince all have,
and the general that trained them as well. Yeah,
so it's not like they're outside, because all of those people came out of Blackvale with them. So you know, Temujin and Lowy,
it's not like they're
are not going to just, all right, well, graduation day, you know. And they know also that these men are aware of, for a lot of them, the boys, they still have family members in the same city they're going to be living in. And so they know, you know.
maybe it's my grimdark heart showing a little bit that's what occurred to me, that they would just like, free game.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, they've been taught such a heavy level of control.
Yeah.
That even Kajin, on purpose, and even Kajin, who is unhinged internally, isn't
externally.
But he's not. He's still very controlled compared to how he was when he was younger, and like he's going to take advantage of it within the bounds that he can. And one of the big themes of the trilogy is, how long can you suppress who you are because of who you've been told to be, or who you were, and how long until that starts cracking apart at the seams. And that's been a theme since day one of starting to write this trilogy. So I think it's going to be the arcs. I can't, like, it's so hard not to talk about the arcs in the next 2 books.
Super spoiler section now.
Super spoiler section. Well, you know some of it. And decided that you didn't want to know the very ending, which I'm very excited for you to get to that point. Very probably sadistically of me. I'm looking forward to that.
Oh boy.
But I'm sure. I can't imagine with all of the threads that I have to do in book 2. I can guarantee you about John that book 2 is definitely going to be longer than book 1.
She's got me on the team. I'm going to add words.
It'll be 300,000 words. It'll be twice as long as book 1.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise that either. We'll find a good middle ground.
But it's definitely going to be longer than book 1 because there's so many. I'm going to possibly be adding another POV.
I think that's a natural progression. Like when you're, because although you have multiple point of views, each one is very not restrained, but like they're in their lanes, right? And they're all working towards something, but that something is personal for them and their immediate cultural surroundings. But then the next book, it's obvious you're jumping into a lot, probably more world building because we're going to see certain people, certain queens. Yeah, and then
she gets her own POV in book 2. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a natural progression of first we set up the narrower stakes, and then we blow out to the big problems, and with those big problems becomes more pages.
Yep. Well, and the fact that it's kind of like a war and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I'm gonna need some space to work all that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of political maneuvering going on here from multiple angles, and it's going to be a nightmare to figure out how all those threads work together. And I'm going to do my best. So I
am here for you if you need to scream about how frustrating it is. Book 2s are their own like vicious beast.
I was really happy because my brain kind of shut down in terms of writing when I was working on the launch, and that was frustrating.
Yeah. Normal though.
Normal, but yes.
Yeah.
Because all we really want as authors is just to go back
to write more books.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden I had the scene of the prologue of book 2, and it was in my head, and it was like Queen Zen opens the book, and it's gonna be
it's gonna be really good.
I'm so excited. Daniel had a comment about anytime I was like, which one is that again? It was always in a situation where it didn't matter who it was, a sparring partner, whenever it mattered.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Where either that or I'd be like, who, and then you would drop a hint like really quickly, like almost as soon as I was wondering. It was almost like you were watching me read and like nudging me to remember, which is really admirable on your part, because I suck at remembering names, as evidenced by me coming on to your own channel to talk about your book.
I don't even remember half of the things half of the time about my own book. So I'm terrified because tomorrow Sarah said she is going to quiz me about how well I know my own book. I'm like, oh man. But what I was going to ask is the one Bruhai boy that we haven't really touched on is Haya.
Yeah.
And I'm curious when you got to the part where it's revealed who he is and how his disfigurement happened.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention that until you did, because I wasn't sure how close you're guarding it.
The people I have mentioned that we are in spoilers. So yes, if you don't want to know a big reveal about one of the Bruhai boys, go make muffins or something. I don't know. Yeah, because that was a moment that was a really big deal.
Oh man,
me.
that was so well done too, because you kept that thread of his father, if I'm remembering correctly, alive really skillfully. And that's an excellent example of what I was talking about at the beginning, where you would draw attention to things in a way that told me that it was going to be important, but I could never guess how. So you kept the thread of who his father was open through the entire book, through Garen's trauma, because he sees what happens to that character. It opens the book, and so then you thread that all the way through, and then so you wonder, is this going to come back to bite Garen? Is it going to come back to affect the king? Like, what? She's telling me that this is important, and then the reveal of Haya being connected to that, it was just like, oh, I knew it. I did not know it.
But it makes sense.
Yeah, it made perfect sense. And that's exactly what I'm thinking about when I'm talking about like how you handled those reveals, and then Jai's reveal as well, where he was another one that I liked really early on, because he's another one who's really sweet, and you're like, oh, honey, you don't belong here, baby boy. But then he, he's kind of the hinge that makes it all matter. And you drop that on us, and you're like, man, I knew that was going to be important, but I didn't guess.
I wanted there to be enough red herrings that people were focused on other characters.
Yeah, and it worked really well, because it's like I was thinking, like, the narrative is telling me that this is going to happen to Zario specifically. The narrative is telling me, and I am sad about it, because he obviously doesn't want it. And what's he going to do? Like, is he going to say no? But he's obviously not going to say no, because he's such a loyal soldier. And then it's not him. And it's like, I remember thinking, I think I even left a comment that it's like, I'm excited for this to happen, but also I'm not sure if you're trying to trick me.
It's actually made me really happy to see how much relief people have been feeling in that moment with Zario, because I don't want to get to the end of the book and the only thing that my readers are feeling is this tension and this surprise and the reveal and all this stuff. I wanted there to be a moment where the character and the readers got something that they were hoping for.
There's relief, but also a little bit of sadness, because there's an awareness that he probably would have been good at it. And so, and that's part of the tension going into it, because it's like, if something happens and he refuses, or he gets killed, or he gets hurt and he can't do it, like, what's going to happen? Because it's like his reluctance to have that much power makes him perfectly suited to the job.
Exactly. Yep.
And it's gonna suck for him, but it's probably gonna be good for the kingdom. So then even the relief is bittersweet, because it's like, oh, my baby, you're free, but then also, oh, crap.
I love that there's a tiny second where so many people have this panic because they realize Itaki still exists. And this moment of like, oh my gosh, she's not going to make Itaki the crown prince. Is she? And I love that there's that little moment of panic. It was really, and so that's another one where, I trusted that you were trying to tell me something, but I did not guess what you were going to try to do. In the beginning, it was more of an intuitive. When I created Haya in the Bruhai Boys group, I knew that he had a very strong bond to Garen, and at first I thought it was just a friendship thing. And then, I didn't know the characters well enough, and as I dug into that, I was like,
it's a narrative bond. Yeah, it's
this
thematic.
Is why that. There's actually a magic connection between the two of them, and
I like it. I like how it draws the story into a circle, it just, and it makes those things matter, because it's like a lot of times you get these stories that have these big dramatic starts.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's almost like you forget the beginning by the time you get to the end, where it's like that thing drew you in, but then it didn't carry weight all the way through. Like it passed itself. Yeah, it passed the narrative focus onto other things and faded. And I find like the stories that when you get to the end, you start thinking about the beginning are the most memorable, because it's like you've kicked back and you're like, it becomes a circle that lives in your head rent free for a while. So I liked that a lot.
Yeah, and to answer your question, Daniel, not yet.
Oh, that'll be
not yet. There's a lot of not yets in this book, and I'm excited to there will be some resolutions to those in book 2. This one, I'm not sure when that happens yet. I know the scene where it happens. I have it in my head already, but I don't know when it happens.
That's very relatable.
Discovery writing.
For real.
To be honest, Chris, don't tempt me. No, I am actually doing. I'm really excited to write book 2. I know it's going to be the most challenging book I've ever written, just like book 1 is the most challenging book I've ever written yet.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about it.
That's the game. Every project that we work on is like the hardest thing.
I'm so sorry, John. I would love to get Queen's Wolf out by the end of 2024, but if it's ready, if it's ready.
Yeah.
So
I totally support that.
Call out. But they're good though, Connor. Like that's the thing that's so, not that he doesn't know that, but that's the thing that I really think is incredible is there are, in my opinion, there are very few authors that can write a 300,000 word book and it deserves every one of those words. And I think you definitely nailed that with Brightwash.
Thank you. Well, Brightwash didn't get to be that long, actually. It was only 220.
Well, fine. It earned all of the 220,000, which is still 70,000 words longer than Blackstone. But yeah, I mean, you utilized all of that space. Which
well, I mean, you say that, but then on the other hand, like I really admire how you were able to, like, I feel like you did so much character work in so much less space than I did. And I'm so impressed and a little bit mad. Teach me how to make my book shorter, Tori.
It would have been so impressive if I could have like come out with like a big chonky bloodstones with like, you know, Shogun style.
But you know, it's right for the story, and then that's it. That's all we can ask for.
Setup with Zarya was really interesting. It got to the point where it felt like it made no sense for him to become king at the same time that it seemed like it was the only thing that could make sense.
That's exactly the push and pull that I was thinking about, where it's like he doesn't want it. It's so bad. It's absolutely wrong for him personally, but him not wanting it made him so right for it. Yeah.
And he's also, because you know that he's not a politician. Like you know, and in that dinner scene where it's him and Counselor Hallex and the Ujos, and poor Zario is just like eating grapes and trying to be somewhere else in his head the whole time.
But, you know, you can pull that off as a king. You just have to make sure your counselors are really smart. Exactly. But then it's like and then you know, it's interesting because it's like it could have gone either way for him. Either he could have been a good king, but then how many of those are there? Or he would have been eaten alive by the vultures all around him. So it was like, you know, like I said, it was really bittersweet that it wasn't him.
Every wolf needs a fox, Krystle.
Yeah, exactly. And
what would that be?
yeah, I'm looking forward to where they
couple. I'm
go.
so excited. I'm so excited. It's going to be fantastic. Matt had asked, Tori, you mentioned once that the world in Bloodstones has been slowly developed over the course of a decade. What does that mean exactly? So the world has existed for 12 years. Katesh has existed for 12 years. I just didn't know who was in it. So like at the time that I wrote what will now be the second series back in college, Katesh, Sundra, Malik, all of the names of all these places existed in that time period. It was just that story takes place even farther to the northwest of Katesh. So we're going to be more in Sundra and the Kural homelands, and then the Draktaharan, which is a massive desert on the right side of the or the left side of the continent. And why is there a giant desert there? I will explain it in the second series. But at the time there was an older, like, you know, king in Katesh, and at the end of Legends of the Bruhai, you will know who that is when we get to Edge of the Earth, because we will have been through this whole trilogy. And it's like a half generation later. So
that's where you started, and then you backtracked.
And I backed it up, and now we have the myths and legends that we hear whispers and rumors of in the second series. We will know, and there's some characters that are crossovers into the next series.
See, that is so relatable. At least for the Dominion, like I guess it was when Addison was not yet born that I started writing the Dominion, where it was the story of the North Star and the Ash Child. So that's about 10 years ago now. And it was more classic fantasy. And I kept getting stuck with it over and over again because I hadn't yet learned the skill of writing a bad first draft and then fixing it. I thought my first draft had to be like really clean. And so I kept starting over, and then eventually I hated working on it. And I wanted to write about Toshway again, but I didn't want to stop writing fantasy yet. I didn't want to jump back to the real world because the real world was starting to suck, in my opinion. So I like fast forwarded their history by however many hundreds of years, jumped to like the Victorian era, because he didn't suit the older, you know, and then wrote him into that. So that's, you know, all of those stories, you know, Blaylock and then Logan and Bronwyn, those stories exist. And so I just went the other way. I went forward instead of backward. And one day I'll have enough courage to go back and go do those older stories.
Yeah. That's the fun part, I think, once you've created a world of this to this depth. Like there's so many
playgrounds.
And like, you know, I'd love to do some like kind of tootle over to the Tikan Islands at some point where Rue is from and kind of explore they feature more. There's a Tikan Islander character in the second series that named Aniriel, who I think everybody is going to absolutely love. She's pretty cool. But again, like it's fun to look at. There were actually a couple of characters that I created back in that first draft of the second series in college who I had kind of backstories for, but not much. And when I started working on Bruhai, I suddenly realized that the two characters that were in Edge of the Earth already were characters I was writing in Bruhai. And it just fit perfectly. And I was like, it's the same. There's a crossover here. And those characters are gonna mean so much more now to the people who
as you follow.
Connor says, Krystle, your first drafts read as shockingly polished even when you end up having to cut the scenes.
I mean, sure, but they're so disjointed. Like things happen, or it's like I realized that Keo, for the plot to make sense, Keo needed to have died like 6 chapters ago. So I just kept writing it as if it had happened. And so it's like they're not sensical at all. So the prose may be good, but like the plot is always like the last thing for me to figure out.
Kind of same.
Yeah. Eventually, enough things happen where I'm like, oh, it could be about this.
You're right. Yeah.
This thing that I thought of 100,000 words later. My book is called Legacy of the Brightwash. I should have a copy.
It's also
but I don't.
down. If you open the description box, Krystle's website is linked down there with links to her 2 books.
Yeah. So that one that came out in 2021, I guess, and it was a SPIFFBO finalist. And it's currently a BBNYA finalist.
All the acronyms.
So it's doing okay. Yeah, I like SPIFFBO because there's a word that you can pretend to say, but BBNYA, I have to remember the letters. It's a little bit harder. So yeah, it's doing okay. I hear people like it. I think, it's all right. That's the closest they come to bragging.
Yeah. Well, if anybody else has questions in the comments, oh yes, you forgot one, Krystle.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Connor, you should hire Connor as your PR manager.
PR, yeah. Yes, yeah. Indian Award finalist. So, and like all of those are run by volunteers. So like shout out to the indie book community for running all of these things for us to help us boost, because like, you know, it takes a village to market a book.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Bibinya.
Yep. Done.
I'm done.
Yeah.
We've renamed it now in this chat. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, we're trendsetters. It's Bibinya.
Yes. So the last thing I want to touch on is there anything that we want to say about Sindri?
Oh man, she got neglected in the spoiler-free section.
She's probably very upset at us right now.
Well, I mean, she got all the attention when everyone was still here, so
that's true. That's true.
She did well. I liked her arc a lot. I think like I said earlier, that the contrast of like different cultures, but also like within the cultures, they are individual. So like her and her sister, for example, are great examples of that. And then her and her brother. I don't know if I can forgive you for that one. That one hit me really hard because I wasn't expecting it.
That is one that I cannot take credit for, actually.
Oh, interesting. Was it somebody else?
Mr. Thiago Abdallah for that one.
Thiago! I'm going to write an angry letter.
I had an entire like arc in my head figured out for her. Maya.
Oh,
all the way.
And Thiago's like, drop him.
Well, I was talking to Thiago about how I wanted Sindri's arc to go, and I was like, what is, I'm trying to figure out how to get her
something that could light her on fire.
Yeah. And something that genuinely would break her.
Cause and cause like an intertribal war.
Yes, and it couldn't be. I had a couple of ideas that were too that weren't grimdark enough. Let's put it that way. And
no, well, and it tracks for her because she's a warrior. She's used to a certain amount of death.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then the death of a child is like,
and especially stunning. In the way that it happens. Yeah. And it needed to be something that would leave a legacy with her and would inform the way that she
handles political crises.
Exactly. Not well. No. And one of the things I love going into book 2 is the combination of wolf and fox that is Sindri and Queen Zen. is one of my favorite dynamics to write. I loved writing the scene at the end of book 1 where they have that little confrontation.
Yeah.
And just the way that those two play off of each other is a joy to write.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing where she goes, because it's like whatever it's gonna be, it's not gonna be good, but we're gonna love it. Like, you know, like, she is such a wild card, like thematically and as a plot driver, and just like on all layers, she's such a wild card. So
as soon as I write that prologue, I'm sending it to you. I'm so excited.
Yes. even her fate is a bit of a wild card for you, because you don't you told me you don't know for sure what happens.
The thing that's so crazy about this cast is I know how every single character ends up except
her. Yeah. But because it suits her though, because I bet she doesn't, like, you can ask most of the other characters what they want from their lives and what their aspirations are, and you know, certainly the Bruhai, those aspirations have been programmed into them, and so there's push and pull there about who they want to be. But I bet if you asked Sindri what she wants now, she wouldn't even know. She would probably tell some lie about something for her tribe, and it's not an intentional lie. It's something she wants to want. Yeah, but and so it's fitting that neither you nor her know what her fate is going to be.
The only character that I have no idea what her fate is, and it's a weird. It's exciting and it's also mildly terrifying, because I'm like, well, you know, that would be kind of helpful to know.
Yeah. Well, but I mean,
I know some scenes, some very big moments that happen with her in this next book that I'm very excited to write.
Yeah. But I think knowing, you know, knowing the beats is good, but and also kind of not knowing what's going to happen to her is good for her arc too, because it's like I said, she also doesn't really know where she's going. So like it's okay if her arc is totally chaotic, because it's like homegirl, you know, she's my ADHD soul sister. Right? You know, so it even in the not knowing, it's thematically true. So I wouldn't be scared of it. I would lean into it.
Oh yeah, Sindri she saved me so many moments in writing book 1, because it was really hard. The other characters, I was so, not that I didn't think about writing Sindri's character. There was a lot of intentionality with her character as well, but she was just
just flowed.
Free spirit character that I could just, and she was so instinctual compared to the other characters that it was like a breath of fresh air every time I got to a Sindri chapter, and I could just do whatever.
Yeah, you could unbutton a little, and I feel it.
Garen is like, you know, the turtleneck up to here most of the time, and even Zario's
also quite buttoned up. Like he's a He's a warrior, but he's like in uniform. He's the one that folds the pants properly, and you know,
irons
the seam into the trousers. Yeah,
I would love if Kajin is wearing pants and a shirt, we're doing well.
Now this needs to be canon. You need like a streaking scene somewhere at some point, please.
Yeah, where he's like mouthing off to Garen, and Garen is like, just put some clothes on or something. Like, I can see that completely being.
We can argue after you have pants on.
Bless him. Kajin is such a delight in this. He's a little like bit of comedy, I think, in a lot of ways, and not in the way that he's a caricature at all, but he's just
no, it's not slapstick, but it's just like he's not comedy so much as he cuts tension.
Well, and I think I was just thinking about this. I would love to see somebody do some art of these characters, but modernized. That would be really interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, and especially going into book 2, as the Bruhai are finding their place, Kajin is kind of an anchor for them in a lot of ways, because he's he's more adaptable in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he goes.
Yeah, and he's back on the streets.
Yeah, right? And he knows this life. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good book, Tori. And
thank you.
Yeah, it's a good book. Like, there's not much more I can say, but your characters are amazing. Your world building is interesting. The magic, we just get a little taste at first, so it'll be interesting to see where you take that. The politics are believable, which is hard.
Thank you, K-dramas.
Yeah, right? And so, yeah, congratulations on everything that you've accomplished. Congratulations on launching it, and congratulations on like being such an important member of the community. Because I think you're a pillar for a lot of people, and so a lot of us were honored to come out and support you in this.
I'm trying not to get emotional.
Yeah, we held it off till the end. I thought we were going to lose it sooner, but yeah, it was an honor to be able to peek behind the curtains on this one and be a part of it. So thank you for bringing me in.
I am so incredibly grateful that you said yes. I was. Your read through of the Bloodstones was so incredibly needed for me, just in terms of like, you caught me in character moments where I needed to make adjustments or changes that were really important. And you saw the heart of the story I was trying to tell so quickly. And you just 100% embraced all of these characters. And I was so grateful for that, because I was at a point where I was starting to kind of spiral into a little bit of that self-doubt again.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's relatable. Am I even ready for this? Yeah.
Right. And the encouragement of you loving the characters reminded me why I was doing what I was doing. And, you and Thiago and Andrew and Sarah and all the people that have been so like in the inner circle of this story. I wouldn't have a published book right now without you guys. And I really mean that. Yeah. And I'm honored to pour as much energy as I can into this incredible community. And it sounds really cheesy, but it's been really, it's honestly been really humbling to see how much support everybody has had for this book. I can't, I don't even know what to say.
I mean, you made it really easy for us, because you wrote really lovable characters in a really good book. So it's like we're not really extending ourselves very much. It's easy to get behind it. So
yeah, well, and I love that. To me, I very much see these characters as autonomous entities. I really do, and I think it's
I can
my
feel
job to tell their story, but they can stand on their own because they're their own. I'm just here writing it down.
Yeah, I can definitely feel it, and that's exactly the kind of storytelling that is so easy for me to get behind, because people are the most interesting stories. You can throw a lot of really excellent set dressing, but the people are, to me, what's most important. And you wrote really good people. Not all of them are good, but they're really well written.
I did not know that, Daniel. That's insane. But thank you. That's a compliment.
I'm not surprised. I'm not at all surprised.
That's awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Imminently readable.
I try. I like Benjamin books, so I tried to write one. Thank you for sharing that, John, and I'm glad that I can be a tiny part of helping with that, because we've all been there.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. So, Krystle, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
You're amazing. Put it out. I didn't come here for that.
No, stop.
I didn't come here for this kind of abuse.
I'm getting better at compliments. I've worked.
You are, hard. Yeah. You did really good. You almost never told me to shut up.
I worked really hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, I cannot wait to to send you more of the story once I have it written. I can't wait. So
yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to that prologue.
Yeah, it's coming. I'm so like I'm
take
so
a break first though, like for real.
I want to write it.
I know, but just trust me. Just take a short break, because it's like when you go back to it, you want to be starving for that story, and if you go back to it sooner, I think you're at risk of burning yourself out, which is what happened. So yeah, take a break and wait until you can't think about anything else, and then go for it. Yeah. I'll be ready.
All right, that sounds good. I'm sure I'm going to be bothering you a lot for the second book. So.
Yeah. Please do. If I can pay it forward, you know, I suffered on my second book, so I'd like to at least use that suffering to help other people. Yeah, I've been helping poor Connor. He's suffering on his second book, but at least I can tell him
we can do it,
babe.
Connor.
This is normal. Yeah, he can do it. Yeah, and so can you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you guys in the chat for hanging out with us. You guys are all amazing, and I hope you all have amazing 5-star reads to round out the rest of the year here. I can't believe it's December already. What?
Yeah.
I'm finishing Jade Legacy tonight.
Ooh, nice.
Which is going to be wild.
I wish I thought to bring it over, but I'm probably going to finish Adam Holcomb's book, A Necromancer, called Gam Gam. Yeah,
I want to read it so
charming.
bad.
It's so charming, and like it's a beautiful little genre palette cleanser. Like it's fantasy, but it's just so delicious and light, but also like it has a really lovely emotional core behind it about, you know, grief and loss. So it's highly recommend.
Nice. I have it on my Kindle, so I will get to it. Maybe I will grab it as like a short palette cleanser and between my next read. Yeah. I've
got all of my novellas. I've got like 3 novellas stacked up there, because it's like I've done a couple of really heavy reads, so now it's like novella, and then I'll jump back into something chonky.
Let's see. Let me see if this is not counting. This was my November. Let me grab the last one. Hold on. So this was my November. Hold on.
Wow. Yeah, so it's time for a novella.
I need a novella, guys.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, Krystle, thank you so much for joining me tonight and for gushing about my characters. I love it.
I mean, like I said, you made it very easy, but thanks for letting me bully you into taking compliments.
It's good for me. I need to get better at it. Yeah. So, all right, guys, have a great night, and we will see you in the next video.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.